We're going to be covering a lot of topics today with the guest that I have coming up. And wow, you wonder who the guest will be. Well, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about a lot of things in the capital region of British Columbia, but it affects everybody in British Columbia, whatever the topics we talk about. I wonder what the topics will be. Stay tuned because my next guest is going to be awesome. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent. I'm the host of the show, and I'm broadcasting to you live from Victoria, British Columbia, the capital region. And joining me is Neil Matheson from Surrey, British Columbia. He's in the Newton area. And when I talk about the capital region, there's so much going on in the capital region. I mean, I'm only maybe a 15-minute bus ride to the Parliament building in Victoria. So I'm not too far, maybe about a half-hour walk if I really wanted to really hoof it. But with that being said, my next guest, guess who my next guest is, everyone? Rob Shaw from CHEK News, and he's the host of Political Capital in Victoria, British Columbia. So political capital, and I'm in the capital region of Victoria. Yeah. Hello, Rob. How are you doing?
Hi. Hey, Brent. How you doing? Hey, Neil.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. It's nice to have you, and it's great kind of touching base where last time I saw you, I was actually right there having you sign my book that I got.
Well, I see you I hear you on the radio. You're always calling in on the radio, and I see you around at events, and so yeah, it seems like you're always in the mix on
mover and shaker,
holding people to account.
Definitely. I try to advocate on a lot of really important topics that really come close to me that affects not just me but people in the province and across the country. Different events that I show up at, just shining my voice forward and letting people know that it's okay to speak up with what you want to advocate for, that you strongly believe in values of how to change the systems that are so archaic. I mean, it's just policies, right? It's all about policies, and then having things change to be more modernized, and calling in on the local radio shows. I called in, was it a couple of years ago also. I asked the premier a question, and that was quite unique, actually, the response I got, but not exactly what I was expecting fully.
What was the question? Do you remember the question?
Yeah, the question was that my corporate landlord, of course, every year goes by, you always get a rate increase from your corporate manager, for your rent. Well, the rates hadn't been increased, so I had the opportunity of calling into CKNW, and Mike Smith, the host for CKNW, was taking calls from the premier, and he was willing to take calls, and you had to be really precise of the one question, and that's it. And I still had lots of time on the air, but I literally hung up the phone because I was just so exasperated. But the question was, I got a rate increase from my corporate landlord. Are you going to be increasing the rates? Because that's the question came from my manager. Wanted to know, why haven't you increased the rates since I gave you an increase? And the response was, well, we recognize that there's always lots to do, but we did increase the earnings exemptions for persons with disabilities. So if you don't know that, maybe you might want to look into that. Well, that has nothing to do with about increasing the rates.
Yeah,
right?
it was very mansplaining, or sort of like, in case you didn't know, Brent. I mean, of course we're gonna know.
That's it.
Of course we're gonna know, right? So anyway.
Yeah, but getting to the beginning of the show, I mean, that was very interesting conversation. But I've had a lot of different events that I've gone to. Went to a rally just recently. to do with Transdev, which is the main company that operates out of France, who provides bus service to the Cowichan Valley, which then provides bus service to Victoria, or a commuter service. They've been on a strike for 7 months. They finally came to a resolution, having a mediator brought in, Vince Reddy, who basically broke up the dispute. Thank gosh for Vince to solve this. Now the buses will begin to roll eventually onto the roads, but people with disabilities who are stuck in the community, either side of that Victoria or Cowichan, they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go to appointments, etc., etc. So those are the kind of things that I try to participate in and bring awareness of, the inequalities of the basic service, a transit service, and it does affect people's lives. It's a whole ripple effect. But with the ripple effect, Rob, I want to find out a little bit more about your bio. How did you get started with political capital, and a little bit more about kind of what's going on in your life?
Just your journalism. How did you get into journalism and all that?
Yeah, well, I'm from kind of Nanaimo, Ladysmith area, and I grew up there. And in high school, in Ladysmith, I ended up doing some, one of those work kind of cooperative things, work hours, volunteer hours at the Ladysmith Chronicle, little tiny newspaper, 2 staff in downtown Ladysmith. And I remember getting assigned a story and writing my very first story. It was about the postal code changing in Ladysmith.
Oh, wow.
The postal code. And it went on the front page of the Ladysmith Chronicle. And I remember looking at that newspaper and seeing my name on it, and it was kind of passed around. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I grew up in a house where my parents were both teachers, public school teachers, and we had a lot of newspapers. We had the Ladysmith Chronicle, the Nanaimo Bulletin, the Nanaimo Free Press. We had the Victoria Times Colonist. We had the Vancouver Sun, and it would there was always newspapers lying around on the dining room table, and you'd stop and read them. And I remember thinking, that's what I would like to do. These were back in the heydays of newspapers, big, huge broadsheets, the big, and just story upon story, and they were long stories, and the weekend was, edition was that thick. And so I kind of ended up going down that route. I did a little bit more for the Ladysmith Chronicle, and I went to school eventually in Toronto. I went to Ryerson for journalism, and I came back. I did a kind of island circuit for my summers, for my work internship. So I did the Nanaimo Bulletin, I did the Parksville Qualicum Beach News, I did the Comox Valley Record, which I think is still around. It might have closed. I did the Vancouver Province one summer. I did the National Post over Christmas. I did the Globe and Mail a couple times in Toronto, and all these kind of little work placements in between your sort of courses and summers and Christmas Day at the National Post for free, working for free, which was, I don't recommend that. But Christmas Day. So and then eventually I ended up coming back to the Times Colonist in Victoria for a full-time job, and I was covering police and military. And I went to Afghanistan when we had the war on there, and sort of was embedded for a little bit. And then I decided that one of the journalists at the Times Colonist's Legislature Bureau, Jeff Rudd was his name, he quit. And there was an opportunity there to go down with Lindsay Kynes, who was a longtime journalist, and Les Lane, who's covered politics forever in BC. And so I went down there and really enjoyed it and thought it was a lot of fun. That was just before the 2009 elections. It was 2008. And then the election happened, and then the HST happened, and then Gordon Campbell was brought down, and it was just whoa.
A lot happens in BC.
Yeah, and it accelerated from there.
I just wondered if you could tell our listeners and people that are watching about Mr. Floatie.
Mr. Floatie.
Well,
that's true.
Tell the story about Mr. Floatie a little bit.
Yeah, that was another beat that I just picked up purely out of interest. Was sewage treatment in Victoria, because it became, when I was at the Times Concept, it was this perpetual issue of we just dump our waste. Or one of the last major Canadian cities that dumped our waste raw into the ocean, out a big long outfall a kilometer off into the sea. And there was this active debate going on of like, well, how come everyone else has to treat their sewage and we don't? And there's a really passionate community that said, you know, well, we don't because we live on the ocean and we can just shoot it out there and it dilutes away. And other communities down in Washington State, for example, they were really upset about it because they viewed us as polluting our shared waterway. And the pro-sewage treatment advocates, they came up with this brilliant idea to create a mascot called Mr. Floatie. And it was this giant, it was a guy dressed in this giant kind of like turd costume. And he would show up at these meetings and he would sit there in the meetings in this costume, and you'd have this sort of, it was kind of the absurdity of the situation that made it so so much news attention was attached to it. So you'd go to these Capital Regional District meetings and there'd be, you know, like a bunch of politicians and mayors, and sometimes the federal minister would show up, and then a guy dressed as who and the photos would just and it kind of it really allowed for some media sort of to get into the issue. But I found the issue more interesting because it was a massive engineering project, you know, a massive amount of money, more than $1 billion, just like all the piping that had to be brought in. And so I covered it for years, and Mr. Floatie was this kind of like character that existed around the sidelines of it. And it was such a fascinating story, you know, that eventually the provincial government ordered it. They said, just get on with it, do the treatment. And then now we have a treatment. I live near the treatment plant. It's just a few blocks down the road in Esquimalt. It's kind of, when you come into the harbor of Victoria, across from the cruise ship terminal, right across the harbor, like just directly across, is this building that looks like it could be like a conference center or something. It's a sewage treatment plant.
I've seen that. I've seen that center. I was wondering what it was.
Yeah, it's like the prime real estate. But yeah, so that was an interesting part of my career.
That was on, you want by there. It's like, what?
Well, the other thing too is like you were talking about growing up with a bunch of newspapers, and I'm a bit older. Like both Brent and I we're a bit older than you, Rob. But like I remember, I think I started to get really into newspapers. It was right around like when the Canucks, like in the 80s, 80, 81, 82, like especially 82, like I got glued to the sports page. So I was always pulling the newspaper for the sports page. And and of course, Jim Taylor, you know who Jim Taylor is, right? I mean, super famous guy. And I used to just love reading his stuff. And it was just kind of like, it was almost like a what do you call it? Kind of must see articles, right? And I just got glued to his stuff all the time. I loved it. Because when I was younger, I delivered the newspaper, and of course I delivered the Vancouver Sun newspaper kid, and they wouldn't hire me until I was a certain age to do, to basically take on the whole route myself. But I would actually do a lot of sub-routing beforehand, so I'd kind of fill in and do somebody else's route. So I technically wasn't hired, but I was actually brought in by another carrier. And I found it very fascinating reading through all the stories. And you're right, Rob. I mean, they were thick papers. I mean, Vancouver Sun, and they started putting all these inserts in, and I mean, these bundles of papers are heavy. I had one route, it was over 225 papers I had to deliver. And
how long did that take?
Oh, it took me about an hour and a half to do that one route. Yeah, it was not bad. And then I got my own route, so I did that one. Plus, I did another route, so it was really good. I started reading through classified ads and then all the news stories. Like, it was very, really informative. And then I picked up doing some of the province. I was doing some of the province, also delivering some of that too. And I remember reading some of the headlines, and I saw your name, Rob Shaw. was like, Rob Shaw? I was like, yeah. It was interesting just kind of going forward. And then I just got a knack for just kind of keeping up with current events of things going on. And as things went on, I remember back, I was actually working for a corporation at the time, and how I really started getting involved with more advocacy stuff is, so I was working for a corporation, and I posted something out, and I had one of the media people reach out. It was the BC Federation of Labor. I didn't know what was going on, who they were, and they're like, yeah, I'd love to do a story with you. Is that fine? Sure. Okay, can we meet at your workplace? Of course, I said, yeah, sure. Well, I didn't realize that there was a conflict of interest. No, you can't bring media onto your workplace. Well, I said, sure. Well, then it was like, no, who are you? You can't get these cameras out of here. Well, anyway, I told them, no, that's fine. They can stay. So they stayed, but they made us go off the property and film, and they used the back as a backdrop. Anyway, long story short is, I basically said what the working conditions were like. I mean, raising the rates, for low-income people, especially when you work for a corporation, right? They have to respect their employees. So they actually made it go viral. Like they started, and it's actually still on YouTube. Actually, it's still there. If you look it up, raise the rates, $10 now. It was a $10 now campaign. So what was it was $8, and then
was the corporation mad at you?
Oh, they were mad. Yeah, they
okay.
The one.
What did they do?
They basically pulled me in and sat me down and said, "Is it all about raising your rates, or what is it? Like you're really causing a ripple effect here. I mean, we could technically fire you right now, right?" I said, "Well, I mean, that's fine if that's your choice. If you want to get rid of me for standing up for what I believe in. I mean, I'm standing up not just for myself, but my co-workers and all British Columbians." And so they did. They gave me $1.75 rate increase just to
way to go.
Just to shut me up, right? But anyway, the Federation of Labor, they said, yeah, like we'd love to take this a little bit further if you want. And I'm like, well, I didn't know what was going on. So I met Jim Sinclair, and so he was the president at the time. And so he flew me out. He said, well, come out to Vancouver, out to Harbour Air, and we're going to fly you out to Victoria. And you're gonna meet some big shots. Oh, okay. Well, what's going on here? Well, that was my first experience of having all the media, all the cameras right in front of me, Rob. I mean, right in the, I think it was in the fur room.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah. So we were there, and I still remember Keith Baldry standing in the corner of the door. He's just standing there going, He's looking at me. I'm thinking, who's that? And I'm thinking, hey, wait, I've seen him on TV before. And I said to, I said to Jim, I said, that's Keith Baldry, isn't he? He goes, yeah. So I need you to stay focused, Brent. You stay looking at the camera. I go, it's bright. He goes, yeah, but just keep looking straight ahead. You're going to be live on TV. Live? Yeah. So, yeah, just be yourself. Yeah, you're fine. And please do not get mad because the who was it now? It was the finance minister at the time. I think it was Carol Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so she's going to be nice to meet with us. So just keep, I mean, it's going to be hard to not want to lash out, but if you do, she's just going to walk away. Right. And so I did. I met Carol James. That was my first time, and Leonard Krogh, and I met all of them in one room, and it was nice. And I still remember the time I said, well, where's Gordon Campbell? I came out and everyone started laughing. They're like, "Oh, geez."
This sounds like six degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Brent.
So I said, isn't he the premier? Like, well, he's had another event he had to be to. I go, how convenient. So that's kind of where my advocacy started, and I just standing up for people, and it kind of blossomed from there. And so that's my story of it. And then when I had the opportunity of meeting with you and Richard Zussman. And having you sign the book, and that was awesome. So I guess that's the next branch where I'm going to leap off to is, Rob. So, are you on any plans of the matter of confidence #2?
I don't know. We talked about it, and it's kind of it's so tough because it was such a moment in time where one government fell, and another government started, and both of them, for their various reasons, we're okay to kind of talk about it And there was sort of a through line of the fall of the Liberals. You could sort of take back to Gordon Campbell and the HST and the rise of the NDP and John Horgan. And I don't know if we stopped and did a book right now, what it would look like. You know, it would look like
be a bit of a mess.
It would be 7 years of the NDP.
Yeah.
And where are they going? Yeah. What's happening now? You know, Horgan's gone. I don't know. I feel like it either needs more of a smaller focus on a very small part of that journey, like the death of the BC Liberals and how that kind of happened, BC United, or you need to wait a little bit longer and kind of, you know, the Matter of Confidence book was a 10-year political timeline, and you could kind of follow the flow. So short answer to that is no, but I'm kicking around some ideas, but no.
Well, I'm glad Brent actually brought up your writing, because I wanted to actually ask about your writing as well. I mean, I like to pretend that I'm a good writer sometimes.
So do I.
I wrote one book to my name, the Daddy Bent Legs. You know, it's an autobiographical one, and so I wrote that. But like it's hard, right? Basically, there's 3 chapters in the book of my book, which it felt like I was just transcribing it. Like there were 3 chapters in my head, and all I had to do was transcribe them, and they just came out on the page. The other part of the book, like the whole rest of it, like it was so much like work.
It's harder.
It was way harder, and I just wanted to ask you, like, you're writing for a living, like how hard is it for you every week to come up with articles and have that inspiration, that muse inspiration of like, what do I write about? And because like you're a very skillful writer, like your writing style is very good, but it takes a lot of effort to put that out every week, right?
I find it very intriguing, like your Orca articles. Wow, like it's just so impressive. I love them. I listen to it. And,
oh, thanks. I do about 4 Orca articles a week.
Yeah.
And I do usually 1 a week for Northern Beat. And then I do other things. I'm doing some stuff for BC Business Magazine now. It's usually around once a month, and some stuff for The Line, which is out of Alberta, and occasionally the National Post. But honestly, you know, the honest answer to the question about writing is the ultimate motivator is fear of deadline. I have constant deadlines, and maybe you encountered that with your book too, Neil. Is it's like it's due at a certain date.
Yeah, it was self-published.
You give yourself a you gave yourself a deadline.
Yeah, you give yourself a deadline.
You have to give yourself grace with anything you do, whether it's the podcast or the book or anything you're doing. You do the best you can in the time you have.
Yeah.
And next week is another show, or tomorrow is another column. And it doesn't have to. John Horgan had that great line about, you know, the enemy of progress is perfection. And if you try too hard to be perfect, if you torture yourself over every column and every episode, you don't go anywhere. So I like to say I run a volume business. You know, it's like if I screw something up in a column, which I do, I got another one tomorrow.
You got another one coming.
If I screw up my hit on CHEK, you know, at 5. There's another newscast at 6, and there's another newscast tomorrow, and you just let yourself. You just kind of give yourself. Try not to be hard on yourself, which is a hard thing for me to do because I use it to motivate myself. Is be hard and critical, and I could do better. But
and
so writing is about as good as I can in the time I have. But then I just have to let it go and be okay with it. So it's never as good as I.
Well, that's one thing, Rob, is that's what John taught me, is that you just be the best you can of what the situation is around you, environmental around you. And I say it on the podcast every so often, like one thing he taught me, and it always stands out, is that he would never promise. He says, I will never promise the moon, because I know I can't promise you that. I'll do the best I can, and I can't make everybody happy. But he always said, just stand up for what you believe in, and just the best you can. And it always stuck in my mind. He says, eventually I'm not going to be leader. And that stuck in me, and it resonated with me for years, Rob. Like, and we were at a conference center, and it was funny. I'll mention to you is that so he was giving a speech in the conference center. It was like a mini UBCM, but it was more for all unions and stuff. And we had an intermission. And so anyway, Sonia said, "Well, I need to go and use the ladies' room." And I said, "Yeah, I'll meet you in the common area, and I'm gonna go and grab a cup of coffee in a minute." And she goes, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "I gotta go and use the men's room." "Oh, okay, so we'll meet here." And I said, "Don't be surprised if I bumped into one of the other party members or whatever." And so I'm in the washroom and I'm washing my hands, and I hear right behind me. I wasn't even paying attention. I look up in the mirror. I was, "Whoa, look who that is." "Well, I bump into you in the washroom, John." "Brent." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So we're chit-chatting in the washroom, and long story short is that he says, "Well, I better not chit-chat with you too long in the washroom. My security will think that you're holding me hostage, and then we're going to have a huge problem going on here." But yeah, but he told me the long story. Is like he was on Twitter. He said, "My administration's doing my work for me. They're typing everything out for me. It makes it look like I'm on, but I'm not. But I can see your advocacy. I can see Sonia's advocacy. I can see everybody's work that's going on. I do pop on, but I'm not on there. Not a lot." And so, yeah, he told me a little bit of history. And he also told me that eventually I'm not going to be leader. Things change. It's like the Titanic. They change, chairs. Eventually there's going to be another leader. They may not have the same.
The Titanic eventually sinks too, so
yes,
that's probably the end of the
metaphor. But he was kind of giving me like little
spoiler
hints,
alert,
saying that another leader may not have the same approach that I do, as comfortable as approaching talking to me. They have different ways, and he says so. It either works for a leader or it doesn't, and we'll find out. And I said, "What are you saying?" He goes, "Well, eventually I'm not going to be premier. Eventually," and I think he knew. I think he knew at that time that things were starting to slip. And I said, "Well, it was great when you had Andrew Weaver in." Yeah, him and I, we started out, it was great. I mean, we had the supply and competence agreement, or that worded that right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was great. He says, then the honeymoon was over, right? So it's just, we got done what we could do, and now it's a new chapter, and we go forward. And
well, let's transition into the advocacy piece, Brent, because one thing that I always say on the podcast, Rob, is when you're talking about disability advocacy, it's not very sexy.
No.
So like it's hard to make advocacy sexy when you're talking about disability, right? And so I wanted to start with the Charleigh Pollock story, because I was really impressed how it was yourself and a couple other really passionate people that really locked onto that story and really gave it legs. And of course, you have to really applaud the mother first and foremost. Because it takes a lot of courage to like put yourself out there and just kind of spill your guts, right? But I was really impressed with the way you covered the story and so I just wanted to kind of start with that, saying it's not a sexy thing, but like when you see certain media people pick that up, it's like go yeah.
Well, it was it's interesting because in some ways it was an easier story to tell than, say, a story about raising the disability rate or the social assistance rate, because it's about one person and you can see them and here's their story. And Charlie's mother, Jory, was a fantastic advocate, an eloquent advocate for her, and also a feeling of kind of, I think, injustice on her part, that something that a medicine that she had from the government for years, that her physician, her doctor said she should continue, that government was, for its own arbitrary decisions, deciding to take away, and that experts in that field didn't agree with that decision. They didn't think government made the right decision. And it was so, I've transitioned over the years into a kind of columnist, analyst type of thing, which I think I hope provides more value than just, you know, he said, she said, government said, opposition said.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it long enough now, 17 years, that I can kind of cut through it, I think. And so I have the freedom in the story, like, you know, with Charlie, in some of the things that I did, in columns, especially, to just say, that's not good enough from government. Like, the explanations don't make sense. The argument is weak. The government should do more in this case. And I think it sort of became kind of a story about the values of government, and the humanity of government. Here's a girl who has a terminal illness.
Yeah.
She is not going to recover. This drug, her doctor says, will give her a more peaceful and dignified decline in her final, you know, probably 2 years, under 2 years. The government, using its metrics, doesn't think that it's worth it. But what is the value of compassion? And where is the soul of this government? It was where I kind of took it.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky to be able to have the freedom to kind of write that, because I think when you're doing pure journalism reporting, which I did for many, many years, you sort of need to kind of like parcel it out and when you do sort of more column writing, you can kind of take a position. And my position was, this is the price you pay to live in a society where you have compassion. And that is the only girl with this rare disease whose doctor says she should have this medicine, who she's been on it for a while, who would become the first child in Canada to ever be discontinued this way, is not a decision that government should make based on some abstract spreadsheet from the experts. They have this little panel of secretive, anonymous doctors.
That's the thing that really bothered me. It was like everything was so anonymous. And then you had the health minister and Ravi Parmar. They were both, well, Ravi Parmar was saying, like, I'm reaching out to the mother, you know, I've been there since the beginning. And the mother comes out on Twitter, says, no, you weren't. And the health minister, Osborne, she's like, I'm turning over every stone. It's like, no, you're not. You know? So it's just,
it is a, you know, you can see what government's trying to say, which is politicians shouldn't be deciding who gets what medicine, you know, on an individual basis. They shouldn't have the ability to roll in and pick you, Brent, and say, we are going to do X, Y, and Z for just you and nobody else in the province, the politician, because otherwise Horgan, you know, like it's not the right system. And so government's argument was, we put this panel of doctors in and they decide who gets drugs. And that may be fine for diseases where the evidence is settled, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things where the world is studying it. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of expertise. There's like one of the only people in Canada and the only person in BC with Batten's disease was this girl. And none of the people on that panel were Batten disease experts. And the experts internationally were saying something else. And the government got caught in this position where none of the experts wanted to talk. None of the experts wanted their names attached. None of the experts would defend their decision. But we have a system of accountability where you spend public money and you make public decisions and you're accountable for them. And you cannot just turn over all of that to a panel of experts. You just can't. You can't. You can take their recommendations. You can ask them for the best advice, but you as the government make decisions. And if the public doesn't agree with them, then you are voted out or voted in. That's the principle. And so I think the system needs to be tweaked in rare diseases. Yes, you have to have experts, but at the end of the day, it's public money and policy decisions, and the minister has to be accountable for them. And the government got caught in this passing the buck kind of thing, and I think that was part of the story too.
anyway, it was really fascinating to see everything that was happening with that. And again, I give full marks to the mother for being really courageous with sharing that. The other thing too, I wanted, maybe we can go right to your political capital podcast, because Brent and I have shared, like, the thing that I really like about your podcast, Rob, is how
I love it.
How there's a certain stillness to it, and I don't mean, when I say stillness, I don't mean boring, but there's like this sort of this calmness, the stillness, like everybody's in a real tight box, but everybody's like so still, and they're just really patient and waiting for their turn to speak, kind of thing. And that is like so rare to, like, because everybody's got a really strong opinion. Everybody's got a really strong opinion on that podcast, but everybody's like really still and staying in their box and just waiting for their turn to speak. And I thought, like, this is great. This is great.
It reminded me of like when you're in school going, can I?
Because you never get to see that. Like, there's so many podcasts, or like even with political debates, like everybody's over talking, everybody's interrupting, everybody wants to be louder than the next person, everybody wants to say, well, I just want to share my opinion, and who cares about your opinion, right? And so your podcast is the complete opposite of that, and it's like, that's so great to see that, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And I it's kind of what I was aiming for. It's sort of modeled after the At Issue panel from CBC's National, where you have the same, you have Chantal Hébert and you have Andrew Coyne, and you have the same sort of people on most of the time, every week. And you go around and talk to them, and you don't attack each other. You're not dunking on each other. And most importantly, you're not reading talking points. There are so many political panels where the people who come on just read whatever their party has written for them. And it is boring beyond all get out. And people talk past each other. And so that was one important thing I wanted to have in it. And the second thing is, I didn't want to have any politicians, because I talk to them all day and they'll just come on and read those talking points. I wanted to have people who had experience in politics, but were also good people who were willing to say things, about how they feel, because they're all experienced. The hardest person on the panel, the person with the hardest job, is Jeff Ferrier, who comes from the world of New Democrat organizing, and worked for the government during COVID, and now does his own thing, because a lesser person, and I mean that deliberately, a lesser person would just read what the NDP pressures people like him to say, and he does not. He comes on, he gives his opinion, he calls out the government when it's doing a bad job. He says the lines aren't working, this defense isn't working, here's an opportunity, they could go this way, they could say that. And I know the government gives him grief over it. But he, that's what I like about it, is principled, intelligent people, myself excluded, who are talking about politics, and in a calm, insightful way, and not talking down to people, and not reading lines to them. And so I hope it adds. It is very different. Like, it is. I know some people prefer the hot take, spicy dunk on each other, quick line sort of stuff, and I think we have enough of that. So
definitely. And that's why I find it very informative, because he does hold them accountable, Jeff, and it's really awesome, because I think there was one episode you had on, I thought, wow, Jeff, like, wow, you're really got the knives right out here. You're going right at the NDP, but
sometimes he defends them too, and he defends them very effectively. I'll be the one who's poking them on something, and Jeff will be like, well, actually, I think most people feel this way, and I'll have to sit there and I'll think, he's got a good point. Like, and it's really about credibility and your own authentic. To go back to Horgan, which could probably be a through line in everything we talk about, authenticity is the key, right? If you're speaking from the heart and about your values and what you believe in, it's very hard for someone to tear you down or attack you and your personal kind of moral compass, because it's who you are. And so I think that helps too in the show and in politics, is it's just people, these people believe and articulate their own views with their expertise behind them, and they all have experience, Jillian with the Greens, but she was running one of the Green leadership campaigns that didn't win, the Jonathan Kerr campaign. So she's got that, they're not tied directly in. Allie was part of, the kind of BC conservative world for a little while, and she's sort of a little bit less now. And everyone's sort of, not, they're there, but they're not beholden to their parties either. And so that, I think, helps.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when you say things from the heart, it's just without reading a script. It's like, that's one thing that John said to him. We were having talk, and I said to him at one convention, how do you memorize all this stuff? Like, do you have a script? He goes, no, it's up here. I say it from
That's right. Yeah. Well, most of the times it worked, and then sometimes he would say something. But the key, I think, even when he said what if he was on here, would admit were stupid things, he'd probably say, that's stupid. He had a few stupid things that he said over the years. He kind of apologized and sort of said, I got a little passionate and I said it the wrong way. And, I think that goes a long way. This iteration of government is so worried about being smart and right all the time that it can't, because of the way it's structured, where only a small number of people control everything. Those people will never admit when they're wrong. So they kind of gaslight everyone down the pyramid that we're not, Premier didn't make a mistake, or the strategy wasn't incorrect, or the position isn't wrong. Everyone else is wrong, but we're going to have to change it here because all the stupid people out there kind of don't get why we're right about it. And Horgan did not have that. And that change in tone, I think, is part of the challenge that the government's having now.
That's where I see it at too, Rob, is that a complete change of leadership, like daytime, nighttime. And now I see nighttime, not daytime, with the leadership as the pathway that the government's going. I mean, all the different crises that are happening, affecting people's lives. I mean, is it the drug toxicity situation, the homelessness on the streets, crime disorder? I mean, all the crimes that are happening, and it's deflecting it. Well, it's the federal government. We need them to do this. Well, then it's like, well, what about all the beds that were supposed to be provided last year? Like, what the one mayor at UCM, like, where were the beds like last year? And it's like the government deflects it. Well, well, there's more to do, and like all these different lines of, there's no money. There's no money.
Well, there is no money because of government decisions. And I guess, in government's defense too, these are complex problems. Like, they are not, the government got rid of a benefit for somebody and people want the benefit back, and the government will bring the benefit back. These are healthcare, like national healthcare staff shortages. They are like a toxic drug crisis that has no easy solution. They are affordability problems and cost of living problems that come from all over the place, from grocery stores and international supply chains. And but I think what government is sort of missing is, if you blame someone else, and there are things you can do within your provincial control that maybe don't solve the problem but still look like you're taking action, then you're kind of missing an opportunity there. So the problems are complicated, the solutions are expensive, and they require political will to fix, and none of those things are easy. But this is the hardest part of the, like Horgan, you could make an argument Horgan had it easier. He came in, through his own choices, kept spending low, and said no to a lot of things, and had a honeymoon period and whatnot. This government, 7 years in, has a ton of baggage. There are people, including yourself, who are like, you haven't done the things you said you were going to do, and you haven't helped bring us up to the level you said used to say you wanted us to be at. And the frustration builds, and the patience diminishes, and so it doesn't have the benefit of the doubt anymore, and it doesn't have a Horgan who could kind of elevate people's hope, and you see it suffer.
Well, the thing about Horgan was he had kind of that je ne sais quoi, like he had that element to him. He was he was called Hulk Horgan, right? He
had
that element to him. But he also had the father knows best. So he had kind of that dichotomy of the father knows best versus the Hulk Horgan thing, but it worked. It worked, and I think the reason why it worked is because he always used his humbleness was kind of his compass. Like staying humble was his primary compass to the whole thing. It's like, I gotta stay humble. I gotta work to protect the people of BC, and again, I'm gonna throw Eby under the bus a little bit. But what was the first thing that Eby did when he got power? Is like, let's give everybody raises. Like, let's look after me first. Like the very first thing was like, let's look after me first, right?
Or promise $1,000 that coming, and it never did come.
And I was like, whoops, can't do that anymore.
I remember Hulk Hogan. I mean, wow, it's don't make him mad. I remember I think the last press that he gave, and then he threw his hand. He goes, that. I think it was Von Palmer was there, asked him a question, and you could tell he just dropped the F-bomb. It's just like he goes, just threw his hand out, and I'm thinking, oh man, I still remember the time in the legislature, Rob, where he dropped the F-bomb. Everyone was just like, whoa, like, what are you doing, John? And I think he just
then he apologized. He said, if my mother was here, she'd wash out my mouth with soap.
Yeah.
And that was a very relatable thing, because we all have, had mothers who've been like, don't use salty language. I think a different politician, Christy Clark or David Eby or Gordon Campbell, if they had done that, may not have apologized. They may have, like, I could see if David Eby did it, I could see all the people around him turning it into some sort of like viral kind of moment of his leadership and versus what Horgan did. So he had a political antenna and sense to him, and but also politics is a little bit about luck. It's like playing cards, like people make playing cards seem like it's all skill, but there's a lot of luck involved in the cards that you get dealt, and there's a lot of luck in the timing that you have, and when an election is, and what happens to be the issues. I mean, Trump is not an issue this government created; it has to roll with it.
Exactly.
Even housing affordability to a certain extent isn't an issue the provincial government created alone. There's mortgage, there's interest rates, and there's the pandemic, and there's people, and there's investors, and so some of it is timing, and Eby's getting hit with super complicated, changing situations that exist out there beyond him, and
I always call it a pre-existing problem that was already there, and then it was like, oh well, now we got economic headwinds that are why we can't do this and that, and then it's deflecting it. Well, it's because of the guy down south, and well, it's like you got to take responsibility, ownership of the problem that is in the province now, and do the best you can to try to conquer each situation at a time. But deflecting it is not always a good look either, because I mean they could end up, well, I mean we know we got an ultra thin election that happened last time, one seat. I mean, wibble wobble. I mean, now there was that one question that was at the UBCM. I think was it you asked? I think you asked David. Was it? Was it Eleanor Storko? Would she join on?
Mm-hmm. Who knows?
His take on that. It was just like,
it's a tough one, the enemy of your enemy is my friend, or whatever that line is, where like Eleanor Sturko has been the most effective opposition critic. And if the NDP could silence her by bringing her over, that would be a win. She would have to sort of believe that the government that she's criticized for years is moving in the direction she believes in on drug policy and safety. And I don't know if that's it. But the NDP would love to have an extra seat, because if they had that one extra seat and a 2-seat majority, and then they would not have to have the speaker break the ties.
Right.
And it gives them just a little bit more breathing room. It gives them the legitimacy of government increases a little bit with that. But, as Eby's answer was never say never, which I think applies to almost any topic in politics these days.
And now we got a new leader for the BC Green Party. So that's going to be interesting. Where she said she wants to hold the NDP's feet to the fire, literally.
She's definitely taking the party in a new direction.
Yeah,
much more activist. And I don't say that word to be like belittling or dismissing in any way activist. I mean, she intends to take positions that the Greens didn't take before and fight them in a way they didn't fight before, right to the NDP. And they're going to be positions that are harder lines on, and they're going to be positions that make the NDP uncomfortable. And I think the version of the Greens that we've seen the last little while has been cooperating with the NDP so much that they kind of self-censor themselves. They're a little worried about going too far down a path because it'll make their partner uncomfortable. And what if they take a position? Do they have to fight government for it? And what if government's upset? And they're a party that has very limited support provincially in the big picture, right? Like if you just look at how many people vote for them, and their support has been falling, but they have an artificial amount of power because the elections have been so tight that their 2 or 3 seats are seem bigger than they are. And the question for the Greens is, can you do something to grow your party beyond 2 seats? Because you're stuck there. And if the next government has a majority, you're going to be completely useless to them. And they're not going to cut a deal with you, and you're not going to get anything. So your path has to be to grow into a real party with multiple MLAs who can make a difference. And that, she's got a path, and she won by a resounding amount. So,
well, especially when she's not, she doesn't have a seat right now, so she can actually use that to her advantage and recruit more potential MLAs in different ridings and grow the party. Because I think of having it like, I think it was that Adam was mentioning in the UBCM lore. Now she can actually, Adam Olson had mentioned that. Yeah, I mean, she can use that to her advantage and get out in the communities and town hall meetings and listen to what matters most to people, and where do they want to see things changed, and using her voice to really not just hear, but saying that what we're going to do. Like it's like there's a difference of saying, yeah, I hear you, but what are the actions? Like what are you going to do to resonate the party going forward, right? And I guess there's different tactics, and she seems to be really gung ho on wanting to move the party forward. I mean, it's going to be interesting because. Like nobody knows when the election's going to happen in BC. I mean, is the BC NDP going to last for their whole mandate? I don't know. I still see some wobbling.
But the BC Liberals, like they were a one party, and now they're like 3 or 4 parties. And it's just like, how can that be good?
I still don't think they should have changed their name.
I remember when they changed their name, I'm going, this is going to backfire spectacularly. Yep. Like as soon as they did that, I'm like, that's the end of that. Like you could just kind of call it. And it was a really bad choice for them to do that.
Well, kind of hiding out now. He's nowhere to be seen.
No. Well, they're in the center right, as we used to call it. Like it's fractured, and if you had an election today with One BC, which is the far right party of Dallas Brody, and the BC Conservatives, which now without Eleanor Sturko, we're not quite sure where they are. And then maybe Centre BC, although I'm not sure Centre BC is really going to take off, but like they would field some candidates. You would have such a vote split on the kind of center right that the NDP would win probably a landslide majority. And it would be an artificial majority, right? I mean, that's the way our system generates. It's not like the public would be so enthused by the NDP, but they would probably win a lot of seats. And I'm sure that's going through the mind of David Eby and his advisors right now, and finding some way to engineer that possibility. And maybe the center right unites again, like the BC Liberals in the late 1990s, and comes together as to one force, but it would require all those people to cooperate and to I don't say moderate, but compromise, right? The center the BC Liberals were a fiscally conservative party that was socially kind of moderate. And Gordon Campbell said, we're not reopening the abortion debate. We are not going to go down the kind of anti-LGBTQ stuff. This is who we are. And could you get all three of those parties now to cooperate on those issues when One BC, their entire shtick is anti-reconciliation, anti-Indigenous kind of rights, anti-trans rights, anti-LGBTQ pride parades? Like, how are you going to get them to agree not to advance those positions to be part of a larger party? And that's the challenge that we're sort of in. And the NDP have got around it by the fact that all the people in the environmental movement who are upset at them have splintered off into the Greens. Yeah. So they are now in some ways a combination of part of the NDP and part of the BC Liberals under a BC NDP banner, and the rest of the Liberals are fighting over here, and the Greens are fighting over there, and they're in the best position out of all the parties in terms of like voter support, I think.
Well, yeah. Now we got the major problem happening with John Rustad, the leader. I mean, what a fiasco that has been in the last little bit in the news stories. Like, wow, like, so what's going on there? Like, I mean, just everybody kind of gets up to speed on that.
Well, he's got a couple problems. One is that he's got lots of people who want his job, which is the perpetual problem of an opposition leader, is everyone thinks they can do your job better than you. So he's got people campaigning to kind of replace him. He had a leadership review process that he created, which was bizarre. It took 4 months to do this leadership review where he went to every single riding, and every single riding in the province had a vote, which was not how most parties, they just do. Like David Eby will have a leadership review in November at the NDP convention, and it's just going to be one vote. It'll be one vote in the room, right? So Rustad created this bizarre process, and then the process got mired in controversy over fake membership signups by people who might have been supportive of him and worried he wasn't going to win.
Two dead people.
So then and then the legitimacy of the process got undermined, and then he looked even weaker. Then he emerged with only 70%, and he sort of reached this point last week where he had to decide if he was going to stay with 70% leadership numbers, and he decided he was going to stay. Everyone keeps thinking Rustad's just going to walk away at some point and be like, well, I'm done. And he is doing the opposite. He stayed, he identified his top critic, and he fired them. And he sent a message to everyone else in his caucus: you either come out and support me, or I'm going to get rid of you.
Oh, wow.
And it whipped people into line. And so he's more of a fighter who wants to keep his job than I think we give him credit for, maybe. And everyone keeps thinking Rustad's going to get thrown out. This is like the 5th time we've had the big Rustad's going to lose this, Rustad's caucus meeting, Rustad's over, Rustad's done, and he finds a way to keep going. So
it's like the Energizer Bunny just keeps on going.
And could he be premier? Well, again, timing, right? So like timing. When's the election? Who is he fighting against? What are the positions of the other parties? What are the main issues? Like we don't even know what the main issue in the next election is going to be, because it's going to come out of nowhere, right? It's going to come out of nowhere a year or 2, 3 years from now. Some topic we didn't think, some cutback to some government program, some horrendous, case in the community involving, violence or government failure or something that hurts some people. Like something is going to happen. And timing will be a big part of it too.
That's what I find so interesting, because you just don't know the unknown going forward, and that's what keeps people so intrigued of what's going to happen next. And I mean, or maybe it was that big giant inflatable person that was actually a little bit higher than David Eby.
Yeah, inflatable David Eby. He was holding a LNG smokestack and an oil smokestack like this, right? And he was on top of a burning earth, I think.
Geez.
You know what else is timing, Brent?
Yeah.
We're at the end of the hour.
We're at the end of the hour.
Go by so fast.
Yeah, I know. So I wanted to turn the show a little bit over to you, Rob. Pretend you're on your own podcast, and you get the final question. If you have a question for us or just a final comment?
And one little twist, actually, just to throw the actual viewers off, I'm gonna get Rob to actually exit the show.
You want me to exit the show for you guys too?
Yeah,
sure.
You can actually.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question first. I'll come up with a question first. If you could get the Premier to do one thing right now, money's not an option, policy is not an option, just one change, what would you get him to do?
I know my answer. I'll get Brent to do it first, though. Give his answer.
My answer would be to show respect and dignity to fellow British Columbians on low income.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yep. Neil?
My answer is always the same for the last 12 years, and the clawbacks. And the clawbacks. Like I've had my survivor's pension clawed back for the last 12 years. It's so perverse, so disgusting, and it's like you're not honoring what a pension is. A pension is a guaranteed income supplement, and what's the thing about a guarantee? It means you can't touch it. But the governments for the last 30 years, it's like, I want to touch that. I want to take it away. Yeah,
they keep deducting it and or adding it as
So that's my thing. Yeah. I always talk about pink unicorns, and it's like that's a huge pink unicorn. Just like also the idea that we have $500 shelters. Is another pink unicorn, right? Like where can you rent for $500? You can't.
Yeah,
that's right. The shelter rate is so
low, really low.
Yeah.
But I find it just so magical of the it was like the shell game, right? Is like the COVID supplement was $300, right? Mm-hmm. So that was brought in 2020, and then when Horgan was in, we actually met Sonia and I actually met him in Langley at the time, and he says my friends are here. All his security are all around the park, so they have it all cornered off, and a big giant audience there, and the security saw us coming in, and Sonia goes, we gotta go to Langley, we gotta go because John's there. What? Oh, okay. And all of a sudden he yells out, my friends are here, and he's giving a presentation, and he spotted us. And I hear, go ahead. Yeah, left corner, two people were approaching, and then all of a sudden I guess John kind of looked over, and they must have told him, and he goes, hey, my friends are here. They're like, John, here's John, stay focused. Yeah, no, I am. And he goes, yeah. And so anyway, we got in, and that's how he kind of told us about the COVID supplement, what was going to happen. And he had said to us, you can't tell anyone. You can't advocate, to tell anyone what my plans are. It's not going to go away. I'm going to keep it at 50%, maybe plus 25. I go, what does that mean?
But it did go away.
So instead of $300, we're going to, no less than 150, maybe 175. Most likely 175 you'll get to keep out of the 300, but I'll keep advocating going forward. He said he was the only voice at the table, Rob, that would advocate to want to keep it 300. I said, why won't they keep it at 300? Because I'm the only voice at the table. And he said, that's all I can tell you, but I'll keep pushing forward to make it $300 going forward. So 2 years later, in 2023, that 125 came back, but it only went to some PWD, persons with disabilities in BC. And the government saying, look, we raised the shelter rate. Well, why didn't you just leave it in place in the first place? And it was more of a splashy, look what we did. And to me, when I say dignity and respect, that was, the question that you asked is, I thought, well, why not just leave it in place? Because it changes a person's whole well-being and their decision-making. And that's part of my advocacy going forward, is holding the government account of, if you're going to say something and do something, leave it in place because it changes a person's life. So it's part of advocacy, learning and living and going through the whole process. And we
try to make it sexy, like I said. We try. And then about the bus pass, that 45. But that's a whole other podcast. Right?
Yeah, that's another podcast. Yes. Yeah.
Well, what can I do what do you want me to do to sort of say goodbye? On
you've been watching the PWD Allies podcast.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we'll do that for everyone who's watching. We will say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in every week to the PWD Allies podcast, for your support for helping us with our advocacy each and every week. And we will be back next week with more guests, with more advocacy, with more sexy advocacy, as Neil would say, here on the PWD Allies podcast. Thanks for watching.
That was awesome. Bye, everyone.
That's awesome.
Sexy advocacy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And I look forward to having you on again, Rob.
Okay. Take care.
Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.